Let's explore the paradox of culture and ego. Ego, I, identifies with a pattern of thinking, feeling, speaking, doing, and being, which is ultimately an illusion. And we can see that when we take the one, the whole, and we look at what language is, what consciousness in human terms is, right? If you just say one, all, like how are you doing, one, does your awareness go up? There's no distinction. How are you doing, right? There's some distinction between those words. If you just say, ah, right? There's no awareness. And so what we do in order to create consciousness is we divide the one into a series of polarities. And then we gradate those polarities, like we could say hot, very, very hot, right? And we divide things on continuums between hot and cold, which they're not really continuums because what is hot is relative to something else, right? If you've got 380 degrees below zero, and then you've got zero is hot, right? If those are your only two distinctions on the continuum, it's very hot, right? And the other is, cold. But, right? But it's all relative. It's hotter or colder. It's further or less or closer, right? It's relative. And whatever point you can create on that distinction, right, on these infinite continuums, right, you can point in one direction and give one polarity, and you can point in another direction and give another polarity. But they're just made up. And they're made up because there is no distinction. In the transcendent reality of ecology, there is no distinction. All of these lines, right, they're not real. They're created in the mind, right? We have one, we have whole, and then, right, past and present, up and down, right and left. And then we start subdividing all of these different quadrants, right, into all these different distinctions, which are all made up. And suddenly we get highly sophisticated human consciousness, right? 60,000 boxes, right? This, that, hot, cold, right? 60,000 illusions, and then we combine them in trillions of combinations in unique ways in time. And suddenly an illusion emerges before our mind, and we have an I that attaches itself to that illusion, that identifies with the illusion. But it's an illusion for, in a couple of different ways, right? One of these boxes is called thumb, and one of these boxes is called palm, and one of these boxes is called wrist. Makes perfect sense, right? Is that a thumb? Right? Of course, it's a thumb, right? Well, what's the thumb? Well, it's this bit. Well, where exactly does it begin, right? Is it here? Like, is it here, right? Could this move without the heartbeat? I don't think so. Could the heart beat without the body? Could the body exist without a mother? Could the mother exist without a planet? So where's the line? Well, that's the thumb, but where exactly is the line? Right? Where exactly is the line? Well, there is a line in our mind. But is it real? If you deleted the entire universe except for this thumb, could it exist? Not as a thumb, right? And what would happen to all the space around it? And where would all those other illusions go? Like, it's an idea to delete the rest of the universe, but that's an idea called delete the rest of the universe. It doesn't exist without illusions. There is not a single box in this grid of language that actually holds up as a distinct, independent box. Its entire existence is framed by all the other boxes, right? So wherever we say is the line, and, is it here, here, here? If you move that, that's moving too, right? And if there wasn't that, this would fall on the floor. So this is connected to this, which is connected to this, which is connected to this, which is connected to the ancestry, which is this body is connected to every tree on the planet, right? But we say that was my breath, as opposed to the breath of every tree on the planet, right? So my breath is clearly an illusion, right? Because we're pretending when we say my breath that it's separate from your breath, but your breath is also connected to every layer on the planet. So we can see that language is at its core. There's not a single word that could reference anything that can exist without an interdependent ecology of trillions of other things that it connects with. Every moment in time connects with every other moment in time inextricably. So why do we pretend it's a moment, i.e. a separate bit, when it's interconnected to every other bit in time? You can't take a bit of Nebraska and say that it doesn't connect to all the other bits of Nebraska. You can't say that you could just slice Nebraska down to the Earth's core, extract it into space, and then that's Nebraska. Because as soon as you take it into space, as soon as it leaves the Earth's ecology and atmosphere, everything in Nebraska dies. So it's not Nebraska anymore, is it? Right? What's more, right? The rest of the world changes dramatically. The Earth starts wobbling because that landmass isn't balancing it. So how can you say that when one thing affects all things, that it's separate from all things, and therefore it gets its own boundary, its own word? It is an illusion, right? And if we understand that all words are illusion, if we understand that all human consciousness rests on the illusion of language, if we understand that everything that Lazaris says, the channel Lazaris, is a figment of imagination, resting on the illusion of separate items, right? Symbolically represented by the illusion of sounds that are supposedly distinct, right? So we have thoughts, which are illusions, that reference sounds, which are illusions, that reference words, which are illusions, which come back to referencing ideas, which are illusions, in an interconnected ecology that we are completely unconscious of, right? Because the reality is one. The reality is whole. It's just it's too big to grasp. Which is why you have the paradox of everything and nothing. When you say how you feeling and they say everything, what they're saying is nothing. It's meaningless. They say, I'm 20% depressed and this. Now they're going into the illusion. It's not real, but it has meaning because we give it meaning. If they just say, what are you feeling? What are you thinking? You say everything or you say nothing. You don't get any data because data is a sequence of illusions created with language. Right? So ego is the microcosm, the fractal microcosm of the family, which is the fractal microcosm of the cult or culture. And so what we see, and this is wonderful if we travel, right? We'll see an individual like that, and they're part of a family like that, and they're part of a cult like that. And it's really distinct, right? When you take a Thai baby and raise it in Australia rather than Thailand, the accent, the language, the habits, the mannerisms, the attitude, the activity, it's all Australian. You take that same baby and you raise it in a Thai cult, in a Thai family. The accent is different, the language is different, the diet is different, the attitude is different, the behavior is different. Right? I noticed this when I did a double take when I was kite surfing in Thailand, and a Thai-looking woman was kite surfing because all the Thai women, oh, I don't swim, I don't swim, I don't swim. Why? Because it's a cult phenomena. If your cult doesn't foster independence and exercise and all that, then none of the women swim. Right? So that's the cult meme, is no women swim in Thailand, right? Is the gist of it. So what's this Thai-looking girl doing with a kite surfer? So I said, well, what's going on? Well, she was raised since she was 2 in Australia. And of course, if I'd been in Australia, all the girls swim, right? Because that's a cult that fosters independence, right? And so your individual pattern of thinking, feeling, speaking, doing, and being, right, roughly resembles the pattern of your family, which roughly resembles the pattern of your cult, your culture. And the pattern is a pattern of thinking, feeling, speaking, doing, and being. The Australian-raised Thai girl was dismissive and disdainful of the pathetic lack of initiative and blah, blah, blah of her Thai, counterparts. Right? She was involved with an Australian viewpoint about Thailand and culture. Even though she'd been born in Thailand, she had been raised and learned to speak in Australia. Right? And so when we see those types of phenomena, we see the true power of a pattern of thinking, feeling, speaking, doing, and being that is passed down generation through generation by a cult to a family. And there are severe costs, right? There are severe costs from becoming taboo, from stepping outside the line, the boundary, the habit of your cult. If you're the first laptop to use USB-C, and all the mice and all the battery chargers and all the peripherals use USB-A or USB-B, right? These are different ports on a computer depending on the age. If you're the first laptop to use USB-C, it's a superior technology, but you are completely and utterly isolated. A superior technology on every metric, yet you are completely and utterly isolated. And because of the power of the network effect, it is far better to fit in to an incompetent port by every definition than it is to stand out in a competent port if you are a network of one, right? Because when you have the first USB-C laptop and no other peripherals know how to relate, when you're the first speaker of a language that is superior by every metric, but you are the only one who speak it, the inefficiency of being part of a network of one as opposed to a network of a billion is so enormous that no degree of competency can offset the lack of a network effect. No degree of skill, of excellence, can offset the high cost of being a network of one. Knowing the best language on earth that only you can speak is 1,000 times more destructive than being in one of the more obtuse and confusing and inefficient languages that is spoken by a billion people, right? The network effect, which deals with possibility fields, right? Every time if you have a network of 3 and you have a network, well, of 5, right? So I'll bring that into here. So a network of 3 versus a network of 5. Because possibility fields are generated, right, by multiples rather than additions, the possibility field expands exponentially as you increase variables, right? So 3 times 3 creates a possibility field of 9. You add 2 more points, and in a lineal addition, 2 more distinctions. In a lineal addition, you would just say it was 9 plus 2 would be 11. But that's not the case. 5 times 5 is 25. Those extra 2 translate to more than double. This is the power of the network effect. The possibility field expands exponentially as you become part of larger and larger networks. However, the larger the network, the more you are subject to an unfortunate bell curve, which says that in the history of humanity, Lazaris said this when he said, in the history of humankind, the majority has never been correct. That was Lazaris's way of referencing this graph. But what is very, a lot more easy to understand is that any new technology, let's take cell phones, any new technology, a new language, a new mathematical code, a new laptop, a new cell phone, any new technology, a new idea, a new paradigm, begins with one person, maybe 2. Right? Maybe it emerges in the space between 2 people. They're discussing, Bill Gates and Paul Allen, a computer in every home and this, right? They're nuts. They're way, way out to lunch, right? IBM wouldn't have paid a penny for them at that point, and they didn't, right? The best technology, the newest and greatest technology, begins with one. An early adopter, an inventor, with an idea that everyone else thinks is crazy, if they even knew enough about it to judge it as crazy. And that's a minority. When Lazaris is saying that the majority has never been correct, another way of saying that is the correct thing is the best thing. And the best thing is just a dream in the eye of 1 or maybe 2 people. That's not a majority. That is the tiniest minority imaginable, possesses the greatest technology on earth. at any given moment. 1, 2, 3 people. The greatest technology on earth today is in the minds, in the dreams of 1 or 2 people. It's not in the minds of the majority. The majority, right, is using technology that is a year, a decade, 100 years behind the minority. The majority is using technology that is 10 times worse than the most advanced minority. So you have 1 or 2 people at any given moment holding the torch of evolution. And then you have, 1 billion people using 10 times worse last decade's technology. And then you have another minority that hasn't even caught up to that, right? They're still doing horse and buggies, right? So you have the latest and greatest Tesla before it even hits the road. And then you have the horse and buggies. And then you have the ICE vehicles, internal combustion engine, smelly, smog, cancer, more expensive, wears out, So that's the way it works. So in that sense, the majority has never been correct in the history of humanity. If correct is the best and the greatest, that's held by 1 or 2 people at any given moment. Right? Then it moves on, right? Starts to get to a few hundred people and then a few thousand, right? And then it catches on, right? 99% of the best technologies die out before they take root because they're in such hostile soil, so frightened of change, so fearful of the unknown, in such uncertain territory. 99% of the superior technologies die out because the crucifixion of a fear-based majority clinging to the family, clinging to the familiar, attacks as an immune system anything that is different. Attacks minorities right and left, and every new idea, every new technology is a minority. A minority that consumes vast amounts of time and energy unless it is attacked by the majority. Right? So the majority does everything it possibly can do to kill the latest technology. Right? And it succeeds most of the time. But every so often, the fax machine, the cell phone, every so often, an idea does not get crucified. It gets attacked, but it makes it through the narrows. And people go from ridiculing it and saying it's impossible, to ridiculing it and saying it's pointless, to ridiculing it and saying, well, I don't need one, to rushing out and buying the latest version of the cell phone. Right? That's the way it goes. So the majority has never been correct, but the majority has the biggest network, right? The majority has the biggest possibility field. Right? You enter this network, you gain access, you speak the English language, and doorways open up. You can write to this billionaire, you can talk to this author, you can engage with this artist. You can sell this piece of land because you speak the network of English, admittedly, a crude and dumbed down technology. Inconsistent, poorly spelled, right? Poorly spoken in many cases, unclear, one word for love, ridiculous. It is a ridiculous technology, but the possibility field expands exponentially by knowing the technology and being able to plug into it. Right? If you have the US dollar, a corrupt, high inflationary, right, crude symbol of value relative to Ethereum, relative to any number of other currencies that could exist, that do exist in the minds of one or two people, is 1,000 times more wasteful, more absurd. And yet, with billions of people wanting US dollars, you are plugging into a network, a possibility field of billions. And so this is the great tension between excellence and beauty and a distinct minority, and a vast possibility field referencing the crudest of the crude technologies. Right? It's a tension. Now, culture sides with the network effect. You be one of us, says the cult. You be one of us. You cooperate. You speak our language. You go to our schools. You believe our ideas. You buy into our value hierarchies. You can get a car. You can have kids. Our embassies will protect you if people try and interfere with being an American. Right? You do this. You buy into our network. It may be crazy. Don't think about it. Look at the possibilities you'll have. You can go anywhere in the world with this passport. You can do this, you can do that, right? You can make lots of money, right? Buy into the cult. Buy in to our network. Buy into our religion, right? Buy into our way of driving, right? Buy into our credit card network. Buy into this. Oh, you can have so much freedom if you just join the network, which by definition is wrong. The majority has never been correct in the history of humankind. The majority does have, and always will have, the most powerful network. Because the possibility field expanding exponentially, like if you're joining a 1 billion person network on friendly terms, and you're the billionth and one person, your possibility field expands 1 billion times. 1 billion times. That's how big your possibility field expands versus you being alone in the woods as a network of one. You being alone in the woods as a network of one with speaking wolf language or no language in particular, learning fires, you have a very narrow possibility field. Right? As soon as you join America, as soon as you join China, which has a bigger possibility field, as soon as you join China, speak their language, use their currency, your network possibility expands exponentially. The power of the network effect and the power of intelligence are at odds. Right? The most technologically advanced anything on earth is in the minds of one or two people at any given moment. The most powerful potentiated network are the old ideas of old paradigms, corruptly interpreted, right, with old power dynamics. They're part of much older technology. The reptilian brain with its fight, flight, freeze protocol is the oldest human technology we have. It's very crude. It destroys all kinds of possibilities. Right? But it's easy. And everyone has it. It is the dominant operating system on the planet today. Right? If you understand the power dynamics of fight, flight, and freeze, which break down to fear is the driving value. Fear of what? Fear of pain. All fear is fear of pain in the future. You don't fear the past pain. You fear the past pain repeating in the future. All fear is fear of past pain repeating in the future. All drive that is fear-based is the drive to avoid pain. And so using the lens, using the knife, using the threat of pain in the future. Right? If you don't go to school, it may be miserable, but you won't get a job. And look at the way we treat poor people in this cult. Do you want to be one of those treated and talked about like that? 10,000 people drive by and resent your existence? Do you want to be one of those? Or do you want to be rich? Well, if you want to be rich, even though you don't want to, you have to go to school. You have to do this, and then you have to do that, then you have to do this, all out of fear. Because if you don't, you'll be on the outside. And we don't treat minorities well. We exterminate them. We shame them. We abuse them. We exploit them. Out of the sociopathic principle that you run from something bigger than you. Because if it has power over you, it will use that power to hurt you for its own benefit, to threaten you for its own benefit. You run from what's bigger than you. You chase and kill what's smaller than you. And you freeze, conserve energy, if neither of those protocols are expedient. If it's not clear, if you can't outrun, curl up and wait. Maybe the predator will go away. Maybe they'll paw at you and they're not quite hungry to eat you, and they'll go away. Now, at a human level, with the rational reptile, the rational sociopath, we add in one more protocol of the sociopathic ethic, and that's called please. Fight, flight, freeze, and please. Another way of saying pleasing is ass licking. That's where you determine who the winner will be in some big conflict. You side with the winner. You support the winner to win on condition that they don't kill you and that they throw you a few crumbs of the spoils. Right? So you have gang psychology, you have military psychology, right? You're a little country, right? The aggressor, right? The aggressor is Russia. The aggressor is Hitler, right? You're a little country. Looks like they're going to win. And all sociopathic cult protocols say that they punish those that resist the oppression. Right? If you welcome, like Paris, you welcome the oppressor in, right? Don't mind us, right? Go on, get Britain. If you welcome the oppressor, your buildings won't be bombed as much. You won't be damaged as much. You'll be useful. Right? There, in the enlightened self-interest of ass-licking in a power hierarchy, you will be useful if you ally with the projected winner. And of course, this is where belief comes into. If everyone believes that this person, that this country, that this is going to definitely win, and that all the ones that resist it will be severely punished, right? This is Trump's ethic, right? He has in The Art of the Deal. Anyone who does anything to even appear to offend, he will hit them hard. twice as much as they might have hurt him or anything, right? So a journalist writes, they get a 2-inch legal stack, right? Just retract this reporting or spend the next 2 years, being bullied by Trump's legal team. So they retract the reporting, right? It's like, I don't want to spend the next 2 years dealing with 2 inches of legal bullshit, costing hundreds of thousands of dollars, just so that the public can know some little stupid thing that Trump did? No, right? And then if you become part of the gang, well, all is forgiven, right? Maybe you get a little bribe, right? Do this next time, right? The sociopathic ethic is run when something's bigger than you, pursue and dominate those that are smaller than you, freeze if you don't know what to do and just wait it out. That's what the majority does. And ASLIC, appease, right? Appease. Now, dogs have the appeasing thing too, right? If I discipline my dog, come on, we need to do this. He's not interested, right? Because that's not a very alpha position, right? Come on, we need to do this. He's busily doing what he wants to do, right? So if I discipline the dog, he gets scared. And when he's scared, he always looks to me, what do I have to do? What do I have to do to not be punished? Right? And so it goes from freeze or ignoring to there's a threat of pain, and then what do I have to do, right? So it's a fear-based agenda, and humans are the best at it because they can lick in the most creative ways. They'll do all kinds of things for the abuser to avoid being targets of the abuse, right? In the belief that they'll be rewarded for their fealty, right? For their groveling, for their loyalty. So, this is the protocol that's in effect. It's an old technology. It has seen the elimination of 99.9% of all life forms on Earth over the last billion years. And the survival of the most complex, the best ass-lickers, right? The best fighters, the best runners, the best freezers. That's what we have, right? So the reptilian brain breeds competence in a sociopathic environment. Now, the human ego is the most sophisticated illusion, the most sophisticated identity on Earth, because it references not reality, but ideas about reality. An idea is part of a map, right? An idea is part of a map which fits together with other ideas to form patterns, right? An idea might link these words together in these meanings and say, that's communism, that's this, right? This word, this word, this word, this word, and this word in this sequence shows a pattern, right? And the I is seeking identity, a pattern, to attach itself to, because the I does not exist without a pattern. The I, the ego, the cult, the collective ego, the family, the intermediate ego, does not exist except I am the one who thinks this, who feels this, who does this, who says this, and who is like this. Thinking, feeling, speaking, doing, and being are the patterns that the I holds on to for dear life, because if I'm not my thoughts and I don't know what they are, if I'm not my feelings and I don't know what those are, and I'm not my beliefs and I don't know what those are, and I'm not my choices, my beliefs, those are attachments. If I'm not my choices and I don't know what those are, I'm not my decisions, I haven't made any, and I'm not my body, I don't know what that is, then I don't exist as an ego. And the ego fears death, fears non-existence more than anything, because the ego is an illusion. The ego emerges as an I that identifies with a series of patterns that are part of a map of reality. But anyone who's looked at a map of a mountain and compared it with the actual mountain understands that the map is not the mountain, that the map has almost nothing to do with the mountain. The map is this big, the mountain is miles long. The map is this tall, the mountain is miles high. The map weighs an ounce. The mountain weighs 380 million tons, right? The mountain is made of rock. The thing is, there's nothing, you can just vaguely see a few abstract lines, which aren't even totally accurate. No map is. The map is not the reality. And the ego attaches itself to the map. I think these thoughts, I believe these things. And because the dissolution, the chaos, the unknown, the uncertainty, the dissolution of the ego results from letting go of all thoughts, of all words, of all paradigms, of all feelings about those thoughts. When you let go of all of that, the ego stops existing. And the body returns to the ecology out of which it came. The ecology that never really left. The ecology links all things. So the ego is founded on illusion by its attachment to the map of reality, which is an illusion, to help it relate to reality. Right? And Lazaris says that we need an ego. In other words, we need an I, which defines itself as an illusion that isn't real, so that we can grow and learn and navigate in our relationship with God, Goddess, all that is, using maps, right? Lazaris, all of his conversations are maps. They're not real. Lazaris speaks sounds that are not the same as the things that he's speaking about with those sounds. They're maps. And they generate pictures which are not the same as the actual things that exist. And then the things that actually exist don't really exist unless you have eyes to see them. Right? So the whole thing is an illusion. And the ego illusion is built on the family illusion, which is built on the cult illusion. And the cult illusion, the family illusion, the personal illusion separates us from God, Goddess, all that is. It separates us because as soon as we attach to a map that is based on illusions that are formed by the severing of one part of reality and another, right? When we say, because it starts out as one, it starts out as all that is, but when we say, this is a thumb, that's a thumbnail, that's a thumb, that's a palm. What we have done is we've divided the one into three. There's the one, and then there's this fingernail, and then there's this thumb, and then there's this palm. So we've cut the whole into three pieces. We've murdered God. We've murdered Goddess, the uninterrupted whole. We've cut it into three pieces in our minds. We haven't really cut it up because this is as linked to the totality of existence as it ever has been and ever will be, but in our minds we've committed sacrilege. We have taken the one, the whole, the sacred unity, and we have cut it into three illusions. And we have attached ourselves to the illusion rather than the reality. The reality is still there. It's still one, but not in our minds. And we could be attached to the reality of one, but that's not what we're focusing on. We're attaching to the nail, the thumb, and the palm. I am the one who thinks that, and that thought creates feelings. How does it feel to feel like this thumbnail is not part of God? It's a thumbnail. That's God. That's a thumbnail. We've created an illusionary partition through the severing of words. We've cut through an ecology with an illusionary line, and we say, this is real. The illusion, the map is more real than the unconscious ecology out of which the map emerged. And it's very important to understand that this map is an unconscious ecology and that it is random. And what I mean by that is this looks like a perfectly normal way to see reality, right? We create grids this way all the time, right? Looks perfectly normal. But what if we eliminate all those words and divide things diagonally? What if we do that? And then create all the distinctions there. Plenty of cultures divide the world, divide reality using different ideas, different hierarchies, different perspectives. And suddenly what was, in our culture, we might say that's a thumb. In another culture, they may say that's a thumb. Meaning they divide it differently because it's all arbitrary. The lines are arbitrary. Why not say this is all one thing? Let's just call this a hand. It is. Why break it down into this and this and this, right? Why divide it here? Why don't we call a hand, why don't we call this right angle space, right? 3-inch space, 2.5-inch space, 1.5-inch space. Why not measure the spaces? It's arbitrary. The space is just as valid as the points between the space. But in a chauvinistic culture, the points are more valid than the space. The space is feminine. The points are masculine. Why not do that? Since we're chauvinists, why not measure the thing and just don't even talk about the space? But as a designer, as an architect, it isn't the points that matter. It's how it feels to be in the space. So the only reason you reference the points is to create space. But the language, being chauvinistic, is still talking about points. But if we're to be a better designer, we would be better off saying the space should be more rounded. There should be more space here. We need this space to be smaller so that this space can be bigger. The scale of this space should be different, right? And what you put in the place to create that space is irrelevant. Do you do it in marble? Do you do it in wood? Do you do it in oak or pine? It's not as important as the space. The feminine element of the experience is the space, the curves, the scale, the textures. What makes those? Irrelevant, right? So, but that's moving from a chauvinistic point of view, or a male chauvinistic point of view, to a feminist chauvinistic point of view, right? Because to saying that the points barely matter, right? It's just the space. That's feminine chauvinism, right? They both matter. The point is, our words cut the whole, cut the ecology into an illusion that we all agree on, which is utter nonsense. But other cults, in the 10,000 cults in human history, they have divided the whole in different ways. They didn't divide it into 12 months. They divided it into 32 months or 2 months, hot and cold, right? We do this stuff, right? We come up with these arbitrary things. Why a 10-point number system? Why not an 8? Why not go to 8 and then repeat, 8 and repeat and get different geometrics? Why not go to 34 and have 34 be its own symbol, not a 3 and a 4, but its own symbol, and then start repeating and get different geometrics? We like 10. Why? We do? Okay. It's pretty arbitrary. So mathematics, the system we use to cut up time, why 60? Why not 61? Why not 65? Why not 100? We didn't feel like it, right? 60 seconds, that's what we do. 12 hours, 24 hours, that's what we do. Is there really any reason we can't have 31 hours in a day? No. You just build the clock differently, but you need cult conformity, right? And this is why it's so useful to use old, antiquated technology, including fear as the oldest technology. Fear of pain is the oldest technology, to create cohesion and conformity, to punish minorities when they diverge, right? We can't have these idiots adding 61-hour clocks and then half the population says, I'll see you in 61 hours. The other one says, oh, what's that in the 12-bait system again? It creates chaos. So we kill them, right? We kill them, right? Any new idea, if we can get away with it, any new person, any new religion, we kill them. It's so peaceful, right? We don't have to think. We don't have to deal with all this stuff. And so our cult of ego and culture is an arbitrary illusion that breaks the one into many in a largely arbitrary way that is useful, right? It's useful to tell the doctor on the telephone, the right thumbnail is blue turning black and there's blood dribbling out. That's a useful bit of nonsense, because then the doctor can say, well, dip it in hydrogen peroxide, wrap it here, has the nail. Okay, you don't need to come into the hospital. It's a useful bit of nonsense. Absolutely wonderful, right? And so if you can do that, whereas the other people without illusions of language have to go into the hospital and show it, and then meanwhile they're dead, right? It's not as useful. So Lazaris has said we need an ego, which means we need a family, which means we need a cult for this physical world. So we've got one. But the ego has as its foundation the severing of its ties with the divine by referencing the illusion of separation supported by the cuts of language that take our oneness, our wholeness, divide it into good and bad, up and down, right and left, hot and cold. And then we seek to eject and reject the things that we call bad and get more of what we consider good, even if the map is all wrong in that respect. So here's the thing. There is a tension between the ego and its grid of illusion and the whole, the self, the one, the witness, God, Goddess, all that is. There's a tension because if wholeness prevails and transcends all illusion, the ego, the cult, the family disappear. The illusion is shattered and we return to one, right? Near-death experiences, transcendent experiences. You just can't take the rent seriously. Right? Byron Katie has had one of the most transcendent experiences of any individual in modern times, and she just can't take all this nonsense too seriously. we can't have everyone giving away their houses, walking in here, hugging strangers, teaching this, talking about, it all come to naught, right? It would all go to zero. Correct. We can't have that. We'd have to kill them, right? Okay, fine. Do it a little bit to reduce your anxiety. Do it a little bit to be a little bit more open-minded. We'll let you do that, but, undermine the cult foundations, right? Fear and then you've got to be taken out, right? Says the cult, right? You're threatening the status quo. So God got us all that is, wholeness, healing, threatens the ego, threatens the status quo, which cannot exist in too much transcendence and too much light. The whole thing is a joke, right? But you're not going to go to work when it's a joke, particularly if you don't like it, right? The whole thing just falls apart, right? Why was Timothy Leary the most dangerous man in America, according to a U.S. President, Nixon? Why? Well, tune in, right? Drop out, whatever, drop acid, drop out. What? Don't bomb Vietnamese children and women? They could become communists. We got to kill them. Who's coming up with this idea? So why, right? Transcendence erodes systems, erodes corruption, erodes attachment, erodes, right? People willing to suffer to have a better life in the future, right? Christians are not going to give to the church if it's not. There's no difference between heaven and hell, right? I thought if I do these good things that you told me to do and give you some money, then I go to the good place. But if it's all one, there's no good or bad. Even the words dissolve, right? In transcendent bliss. Come to our guilt-ridden dark room and look at a dead man so that you won't go to the bad place. You're already in it, right? It's all one. So it's difficult, right? The ego doesn't like it. The cult doesn't like it. The family doesn't like it. The cult leaders are absolutely paranoid, right? So Christ is the enemy to be persecuted. The goddess is the enemy to be persecuted. The goddess, the one, the whole out of which we all emerge, we've got to kill her. We've got to kill her because she threatens the order, she threatens the structure, she threatens the protocol, the way things have always been done before. Right. Got to kill her. So, in order to have a strong ego, what is a strong ego? It's a coherent pattern, a stable pattern, a coherent pattern. Simple, often dumb, often boring. Right. True to his convictions, right? He believed it in 1934, he believed it in 1984. He died holding on to the exact same thought he had all the time. Now that's, I may think he's full of shit, but you got to respect the man, right? He did what he always did for the same reasons he always did them, in the same way he always did them, with the same results for 80 years. Now that's character. They don't make him like that today. So what is it? What is a strong ego? Right? My thoughts, they're the same thoughts I had yesterday and the day before. My feelings, I always feel the same thing when I think those thoughts. Right? My actions, I do what I say I'll do. I say what I'll do, right? Pretty strong, pretty consistent. Got integrity there. Right? My dad was miserable. I was miserable. My grandparents were miserable. And my children will be miserable as well. Can't argue with that consistency. It's impressive. Right? 4 generations of misery. We're not going to change it, just for some little whim. So it's consistent, the thoughts, the feelings, the attitude, the behavior, the words, the vibe. And people like that, right? I don't like him, but I know where I stand with him. I like that more than that hypocrisy. That guy's said this, now he's saying this, now he's saying this. It doesn't matter that there's an improvement. It doesn't matter that I just don't like it. It's always changing, right? I don't like it. I want someone who says the same thing for 30 years. I'll vote for that. So a strong ego is an I that has attached itself to a consistent pattern of thinking, feeling, speaking, doing, and being. What is a weak ego? If mom's in the room, I say that I'm a Republican. If dad's bullying me, I say I'm a Democrat. If the boss is telling me how dumb Democrats are, I agree, right? That's a weak ego. Why? Because I don't have my own pattern. I just pick whoever's strongest in the room and adopt their pattern because, I don't want to have to get into a fight, right? I'm afraid. I'm small. So I run. I'm in a fight protocol. I'm in a flight protocol. I'm not in a fight protocol, right? Dad will cut off my allowance if I don't do that. Mom will, won't invite me over to dinner. The boss won't give me a raise, right? Will make fun of me. So I'm not doing that, right? I don't want to fight. Just tell me who to ask like today, right? I'll run, I'll do this, and don't put me on the spot, please, right? So that's a weak ego, an appeasing ego, a changing ego, an inconsistent ego. Well, Lazaris says you need a strong ego, i.e., you need to have some thoughts, some feelings, some beliefs that have consistency with themselves. But of course, they're all wrong. Now, we like consistency. You said you're going to box your kids' ears if they spoke out at dinner table. They spoke out and you boxed their ears. Now, that's what we need these days. Right? Consistency. You box their ear today, you box their ear tomorrow, you'll box them next week and the month after that. That's a strong ego. I voted Republican in 1936. I did it in 1940, right? 1944, right? That's a strong ego. The pattern is known, it's coherent, strong. Someone says, I don't agree with you. Then you say, fuck off, I'm going to do what I'm going to do. Right? Isn't it wonderful? Right? To the American ideal, it is. Right? It's all about independence, personal autonomy. Says the cult ego, right? The cult ego says you've got to be an independent person. Okay, how do I do that? Well, you do it like this and this. Okay, I'll do it. I'll be an independent person. Right? Life of Brian. You are each individuals. Yes, Lord. We are all each individuals. You must think for yourselves. Yes, yes. We must think for ourselves. Tell us what to do, Lord. Brian. So, right? In cult identities, we all think this. Right? Jesus was born on a Thursday. Now, if you don't believe us, you're out of here, right? Solitary confinement, whippings, flailings, off to hell. You're not conforming to the cult. So that's a strong ego, basically. Now, a strong ego is the most separate from God, Goddess, all that is. A strong ego believes their lies. Now, Lazaris has said that the negative ego always lies, but he hasn't pointed out the fact that there's no difference between the positive ego and the negative ego. The ego is a lie that is based on lies, that tells nothing but lies. And we need a strong ego. And the stronger the ego, the more we believe and attach to the pattern, the denser the illusion is between us and God, Goddess, all that is. Now, obviously, there are some illusions that take us to the gateway to the unknown, right? The best teachings, often Zen, often Buddhism, the Diamond Sutra with Byron Katie, I think A Mind at Home with Itself is dealing with this territory. The best illusions take you to the edge of reality that has no words. Because the whole, the one, God, Goddess, all that is unconscious, meaning it's so much bigger than the illusion that obscure reality, called words and ideas. It's so much bigger than that. We have no reference point for it. We can't do it, right? The best we can do is ecstatic states and orgasm, psychedelic states, certain ecstatic moments that go beyond words, memories and dreams we lose when we wake up because we couldn't take it back there. Near-death experiences that we touch. We touch, but we can't bring them back. As soon as we put them into words, we've lost the connection with the divine, because the divine can't exist within the illusion of separation, and the words say it was like this and not like this, and it was like this and not like that, and suddenly we've lost the divine, and we've remembered the words that take us into the general territory of a feeling that has no name, right? And so the best words take us to the edge of the illusion of separation and let us fall wordlessly into the divine, at which point we look back and see that the words that took us there were all an illusion, that the ego that helped us to arrive at the gateway is an illusion, was an illusion, isn't real. The oneness with which we now identify, connect, is the only reality that has ever been. We've moved from the reptilian brain to the rational reptilian brain, the rational reptile, the sociopathic manipulator, to the rational empath, to the empath that isn't rational, right? To the transcendent part, to the rational transcendent part. This is a good time for a psychedelic experience. When a gang is rampaging your house, don't get high on DMT and remember how we're all one. Maybe that's a good time for the reptilian brain, right? To get our body to a point where we can remember that our body is an illusion, right? So we need an ego founded on a cult that is an illusion. The deepest illusion, the fear of pain in the reptilian brain, breeds for competence. The fastest lion kills the sickest and slowest gazelle and takes it out of the gene pool, so that only the fast gazelles remain. The slowest lions can't kill the fastest gazelles. They're too fast. So the fastest gazelles kill off the slowest lion from the gene pool, the sickest, the elderly, the young. And only the fastest lions remain and breed and get faster, right? In the competitive dance between predator and prey, both breed for excellence. Meanwhile, other predators and prey in their dance may consume energy and resource that offset the whole, that eliminate the whole thing. 99% of all species in human history, all plants, all bugs, all animals, all mammals, are extinct. We're part of the 1% that was bred through the competency. We were bred into competency through the protocol of fight, flight, freeze, please. All naivete has been exterminated as being less efficient than suspicion, right? Only the paranoid survive. Andy Grove, the founder of Intel, often referenced by Elon Musk. It's not fun, but it's competent, right? And you could say that the foundation of love is competence, bred by the reptilian brain with its reptilian fight, flight, freeze, please protocol. When 99.9% of all species and life forms are exterminated and consumed by the most sociopathic of life forms, often interacting collaboratively, what is left is 1,000%, 1,000 times more competency than what began. That competency leads to massive generation of resources for the remaining 1%, which gives rise to the rational brain, time to think, time to analyze, time to pattern analyze, right? The rational brain is 1,000 times more efficient than the pure reptilian brain, making the rational reptile, the human animal, the most potent life form on the planet today because of its efficiency, bred by sociopathic, rational reptilian behavior. That superabundance, the superabundance experienced by human beings in the last 1,000 years, bred, enabled, facilitated by enlightened self-interest, i.e., rational reptilian behavior, has created so much stuff as to not only meet the need for security in Maslow's hierarchy of needs, that's done by the reptilian brain, or the survival. The reptilian brain meets our need for survival, and we have survived. The rational reptilian brain meets our need for security of survival, and we have. To the point where stuff becomes meaningless. Another car, another square foot, another toilet. I've got 5 already. It's meaningless. Which brings us to the third in the hierarchy of human needs, love and belonging, the empathic brain, the antithesis of the reptilian brain. The reptilian brain fight, flight, freeze, and please out of fear. The rational reptile fight, flight, freeze, please out of fear 1,000 times more efficiently and cooperatively out of fear. Then you have the empathic brain, meeting the need for love and belonging, to become trustworthy and to trust, to move towards love and belonging. It is a whole new paradigm. In the West, it's ushered in by the archetype of Christ, of Christianity, to turn the other cheek, to treat thy neighbor like oneself. That's the essence of empathy. You know, I wouldn't enjoy being raped if I was a woman. I'm bigger than this woman. She looks pretty hot. Wouldn't mind a good fuck. But I wouldn't enjoy being raped if I was her. I don't enjoy seeing the fear in her face and knowing that my pleasure correlates with her fear. So I will court her instead, says the rational empath. Right? Love thy neighbor like thyself. Right? Christ, the archetype of empathy. For the last 2,000 years, we have been negotiating between the rational reptile, the human animal, and the human being, capable of forgiveness, capable of empathy, capable of principles that are not based on fear and pain alone. Now, it's a minority operating system, meaning the human species today, 60% of people, 60% of the time, are operating out of fear of pain using fight, flight, freeze, and please. However, most human animals today, when they feel safe, when they feel secure in their survival, and they're tired of getting more money and more stuff so they can get more money and more stuff, and bullying other people so they can get more money and more stuff, which feels absolutely lonely and miserable in the context of the empathic brain, right? Something starts to bubble up. Is this all there is? Just to bully this person so I can get more and do this? Is that really all that there is? I want someone to like me for me. I want to like myself, not because I'm afraid I'll kill myself if I don't like myself, but because I respect something. So it moves to love and belonging and ideals, right? And ideas, right? And so Christianity in the West is this archetype, this awareness that there's something more than just raping and pillaging so that you can do more raping and pillaging. Good as far as it goes. But is that really all there is? What about love? What about belonging? I want something more, right? The temperature rises in the abundance of security. We start to long for something more. It is as natural as the tight bud of a flower opening. It's hard. It's hard when the bud forms, when the seed lies beneath the snow. It stays dormant. But as the temperature rises and the seed, the sprout rises and the bud forms, as the superabundance created by enlightened self-interest, by rational reptilian behavior. I won't steal your stuff because I don't want to go to jail, and you won't steal my stuff because you don't want to go to jail. So we trust each other, right? That's rational reptilian enlightened self-interest. I'd like to steal your stuff, but I don't want to go to jail, so I won't, right? It's a wonderful setup, right, to maximize cooperation out of fear. And it generates superabundance like the planet has never seen. You know, the houses, the food, the car, it's just incredibly opulent. I live better than an emperor 1,000 years ago. Any emperor alive 1,000 years ago would trade places with me in a heartbeat. That's superabundance. But is that all there is? Is that all there is, right? And that leads to this ache, this something more. And that's what leads to the release of the reptilian protocol in search of love and belonging. With the greatest fear being that your partner is just a rational reptile using you to get more of what they want because they don't want to learn how to generate their own stuff. They want you to do it for them, right? It's the greatest fear that I'm alone in empathy. I care about you and you care about my money. I'm not really loved. I'm used, right? So that's the transition, right? When the majority of human behavior, the majority of the time with the majority of people, is fear, scare space. It's not enough, right? It's not enough. When billionaires don't have enough, right? I need more. Look at Gates. I need more, right? When billionaires don't have enough, right? So how do you know that someone's not just using you to acquire? You don't. 60% of the time they are. It's painful, it's lonely, it requires more discernment to see, I want to love you for who you are. I don't need your money. And I want you to love me for me, but you're still scared you don't have enough, and it's harder, right? So we're moving into the empathic territory slowly over the next 1,000 years. We should be, if things continue without any major setbacks in the general up and down pattern, in the next 1,000 years, we should be predominantly empathic rather than predominantly rational reptile. See, the rational reptile knows that if you make people believe you're a good person and trustworthy while you stab them in the back, that's the Pink Floyd song, right? That you get ahead. You look like a trustworthy person and then you stab them in the back when they're least expecting it and you get ahead. You get the promotion. And they're left because they were stupid enough, this is reptilian thinking, they were stupid enough to trust you. Trust is weak from a dinosaur brain. From dinosaur eyes, trust is weak. Love is stupidity, right? Friends are for losers. You got to manipulate and play with other manipulators to get the idiots. And if you and a few other predators, form a monopoly, get all the suckers to part with their money and all that, you got it made. That's all it's about, right? A reptile doesn't know what love is. And so it's so excited about the win, right? It was free, the dumb fucks, right? Remember Zuckerberg, the dumb fucks trust me. There's nothing to lose. Just say whatever you need, right? The idiots trust me. It's great. A reptile doesn't know what love is. And so it loses nothing in its paradigm, but it loses everything once you know what love is. Once you know what empathy is and how good it feels to trust and be trusted and feel the unity and the bonding, that someone might be willing to risk their life to save yours because of empathy. All the money in the world isn't worth that, to lose it. Which is why when you're fabulously wealthy and successful and you know that, to lose real love, particularly over money, is a catastrophe. It's not success to hang on to the money and lose real love. It's a disaster, right? Because empathy is a far more sophisticated operating system, a far more elegant form of love than survival or security of survival. But they rest on one another, meaning you cannot have empathy resting on the foundation of one's death, right? That's called naivete, right? When you give all your money to a con artist, you don't have love. You have disdain from the con artist, and you've lost your chance of survival in a sociopathic environment where poor people have no value. Then you must learn not to be naive. But when you are wise and know how to survive and be secure in that survival, you will give a lot of money away for the opportunity of real love, not out of naivete, but because it's so much more fun to love and be loved than it is to have power over another human being. It's so much more fun when you are secure in your survival, right? So we move into empathy. And empathy is the opposite of the reptilian brain. The empathic questions, the way to know if you are in empathy and the way to know if your culture is in empathy and the way to know if your little clique, your little cult, your little group is in empathy is two questions. Who is in the most pain? That's the first question that every empath asks automatically. Who is in the most pain? And the second question is, how can we, because it's always owned, when there's empathy, there's presumed connection in the group, how can we help? If you live in those two questions, if your family lives in those two questions, who's in the most pain, how can we help? Who's in the most pain, how can we help? You're living 100% in empathy. Almost no one is. It's, could we help a little bit? Would we be bothered if we give that? Will we be bothered again? It's all about me, right? Rational reptile with, or maybe it's in public, so we would look good being, they're all giving money at the church. Let give some money, right, to look good, right? That's rational reptile. Right? We don't want to look cheap in our group, right? So do what the other people are doing, right? That's all rational reptile. There's nothing generous about it. So true empathy based on trustworthiness, trust based on trustworthiness, is 1,000 times more efficient than the rational reptile is. So every one of these iterations, from inefficient slime to rational to reptilian behavior and surviving, the survival of the fittest, to the rational reptile, which uses symbols, rather than actually having to go to the mountain and saying, see mountain, you write a symbol of a mountain and say, see that, and they get it, and it saves you a day's walking. A whole day is reduced to 3 seconds, and that's efficient. That's 1,000 times more efficient. 3 seconds versus a whole day, right? And for every single activity. When you create an illusionary map of reality to overlay on the actual reality, and you communicate, you create a similar language, you save 1,000 times of the energy. So you can do 1,000 times more with the same amount of energy. Similarly, as we move into truly trustworthy human beings rather than human animals, and the question, who's in the most pain, how can we help? That is 1,000 times more efficient than wars, alarm clocks, car alarms, locks, safes, banks, right? Because we spend 60% of the entire human enterprise focusing on fear of what will we do if they do this and how can we scare them not to do it, like we'll have more nuclear bombs. We spend 60% of our human energy trying to frighten other people not to use their reptilian instincts to consume us, right? Porcupines, cactus spikes, revolvers, pepper spray, locks. 60% of our energy. Thought, what is he up to? What? Is he going to rape me? 60% of all of our energy as human animals is spent in fear and protecting ourselves from that fear. When the human animal graduates to be a human being, focused on the ideals of being trustworthy and earning trust as a species with one another, you don't need a lock. You just need a language to ask, do you want me to take this or not? I need it. Okay, I won't take it. Oh, you need it. Here, have it. There's no need. There's 1,000 times more efficiency on the other side of that operating system. It's waiting to be unlocked. That's the third level of love. And as we move towards going from empathy to beauty, truth, and goodness, the pursuit of ideals, the pursuit of beauty, truth, and goodness from a position of empathy, there's another 1,000-fold increase in efficiency. As from the moment people are born, they're raised in pursuit of the ideals of beauty, truth, and goodness in the operating system of empathy. No one would dream of wasting energy on a weapon or a war, right? Or a theft. Because if it's beautiful enough, if it's good enough, if it's true enough, everyone supports you on that basis. Not on age, not on jealousy, not on this and that and the other, right? So this is a direction. It's a long flower of love. It's a movement of operating systems, each one building on the other, killing off 99% of all life forms on Earth and finding the most robust, the most resilient through fight, flight, freeze, creating superabundance for the human animal with fight, flight, freeze, and please, right? Enlightened self-interest. It's created so much abundance that our greatest hunger right now is to be loved and to love. And that takes us into the next stage of the blossoming, into empathy, into trust based on competent trustworthiness, not stupidity. Oh, I'd love to operate on your brain. Give me a chance. No, it's empathy based on competence. Right? I care enough about you to deliver you to a hospital. Right? I care enough about you to study for 4 years before I operate on your brain, right? If that's what it takes to get a good success rate, then that's what we'll do as a cult, as a society. So what are your thoughts? Ego as an illusion, ego as part of this long evolutionary journey of human love. Ego is necessary. Ego as incapable of love. Is there really a distinction between positive and negative ego, or is it relative? Is 1,000 years ago's ego negative because it's so outdated, and 1,000 years in the future, is that ego positive because it's a good direction? Or really is the negative ego just those parts of us that are the patterns that are most outdated, meaning they're no longer serving us? And the positive ego are the patterns that are serving us. But the more positive the ego is, the more positive the pattern is, the more into the future, the more ephemeral it becomes, the more unstable, the more uncertain it becomes. The first person to invent a fax machine saved countless energy of having to mail a letter across the Atlantic. But until there were 2 fax machines, it was awfully ephemeral. And this idea, lots of money going into this idea, it's better, but it's who has them, right? It has to catch on. It has to develop a network. Share your thoughts in the comments below.